Hey, it's Starzy, and today we are doing my January wrap-up. It is the 1st of February today, and yes, my Christmas trees are still up. We don't need to talk about it. I did read 12 books in January, 5 of which were included in my last video, which was Ali's favourite books, hardback hoarders' favourite books. So those 5 books, when I come to them, I probably won't talk about in much detail, but you can definitely go to that video to see more thoughts about those. Otherwise, I think I might try something different for me this video. I think I'm going to try going from the books I didn't like to my favourite book of the month, rather than like I usually just do chronologically when I read them throughout the month, but I think that's what we're gonna do. I don't think I have any other particular updates other than I'm going back to work, so videos are likely to be even more inconsistent than they have been, but as I've said before, I am on Twitch every single week. That's the place to catch me most regularly. Otherwise, yeah, let's get into this. I feel like January wasn't a horrible start to the year in terms of reading. But yeah, so starting from the few books that I didn't like, we're going to start with Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Carl. I cannot read my own handwriting sometimes, so bear with me. Also, this is like the notebook I'm using as kind of an informal reading journal at the moment. Basically, I have 2 horror books here that mostly I just found quite underwhelming. This one in particular is a novella, so it's very short, and it felt very kind of rushed through and unexplained and yeah, underwhelming and unsatisfying ultimately. But we are following like a group of people who are like in university and they've gone on a trip to Japan and they're staying at this kind of abandoned mansion. Weird stuff happens. I also didn't care about any of the characters. Honestly, would have probably preferred if worse stuff had happened to more of them. So I don't know, it was just, yeah, a combination of, it felt like I really liked the idea of this. Like, I love Japanese ghosts and Japanese horror and things that take influence from that. Like, usually it creeps me the hell out. And so I liked the concept of this, but I don't know, I feel like I just needed more from it. It just wasn't enough to really grab me, and just by the end I was like, oh, that's it? That's okay. And then the other horror I found quite underwhelming was a YA, and that is Horrid by Katrina Leno, which I also read this as part of the Lamentable Library, which is Kelly from the Velvet Libraries book club. That's kind of gothic-y. It has a focus on kind of like more gothic-y type books and stuff. And this is a YA horror where I can't even remember it much, so obviously it hasn't stuck with me, but I think it was a mother and daughter move back to the mother's childhood home, and a bunch of weird stuff is kind of revealed and weird stuff happens. And this was one that I didn't like hate. I mean, I didn't hate anything I read this month, so it's got that going for it, but I think I just felt like that was okay, I guess, underwhelming by the end, because I mean, I don't even remember. This is the thing, if I don't have a strong feeling about something either way, like I won't even remember it a few weeks later, so I remember feeling underwhelmed. It was okay-ish, I guess. And then the other book is At the End of the Lane, which is one of the 5 books that was in my last video. But this one I don't think is a bad book, it just didn't resonate with me personally. I didn't love it. Again, more thoughts in that hardback hoarders favorites video that I did. But yeah, not a bad book. I like Neil Gaiman as a writer and I like his writing, but this story didn't connect with me personally. It just meh. Then we do get into the books I actually liked in January though. starting with a comic book. Again, this is one that's included in that video because I read the first volume during that video, but I did actually end up reading the first 3 volumes this month of I Hate Fairyland, which I love the art style and colour and world of this series, because we are following someone who fell into Fairyland as a child and has been trying to escape for so long that she's now a fully grown adult trapped in a child's body. She's very violent and vulgar, and I kind of really hate the main character, but I love the art and colour and world, and it is just kind of a fun and easy thing to read. So I did read, again, all 3 of those volumes. And there are also some interesting things that happen in terms of like it sometimes being a bit of a parody of popular fantasy and things like that. Like I think at one point it was poking a bit of fun at like Game of Thrones and things like that. So it's a fun series, and I have been enjoying it as much as I hate the main character. Although there's also although I'm particularly interested with how volume 3 ended, because there's a character who the main character kind of killed in, I think it was the very first volume, that has suddenly reappeared in hell, basically. But yeah, that's been a fun ride. I guess next let's talk about Invisible Monsters by Chad Palahniuk. Still don't know how to say his name. Again, one of the 5 books from that video, but this is one that I didn't really know what to expect going in and wasn't really sure if I'd like it, kind of because of that. But it was a wild ride that I did actually very much end up enjoying and found it very engaging the whole way throughout. Don't know whether it's all aged real well, especially in terms of like the discussion of gender. I was a bit unsure of how it was treated, but otherwise this was, yeah, a wild ride of kind of horrible people doing horrible things, but also exploring some interesting themes in terms of like personal expression and identity and various things. It was really interesting. And then another book from that video, If We Were Villains by ML Rio. This is dark academia, Shakespeare involving murder. I did really enjoy this. I was a theatre kid. I liked the dramaticness of it, although sometimes the lying and motivations of the characters didn't really click with me. But this is Ali's like favourite book, and I did enjoy it. So that's that. Again, I don't want to go over these books too much because there's a whole video dedicated to them. I also read Where the Drowned Girls Go by Seanan McGuire, which is the brand new installment in the Wayward Children series, which is a fantasy series that involves children going through doors to like various worlds, and often exploring the repercussions that have when they become trapped back in our world. And there's like a school that they go to help deal with that, and there's lots of things wrapped up in it. There's been a lot of installments now. Sometimes they're set in the worlds themselves, sometimes they're set here with people dealing with various things. There was a bit of a murder mystery in the first one. I really love this series. I particularly love listening to them because there's almost like a twisted fairy tale-esque feel to them oftentimes, and so I did really enjoy this. This one was following a bunch of characters we've seen before, and kind of some of the different stories we've seen in different books kind of came together as well. So I really enjoyed this. Although the one thing I will say is, the one thing I find frustrating is because of the setup of this, you have all of these different children who've gone to different worlds, and sometimes they mention worlds that I'm really like, can I just know more about that, please? Like, one of the girls I think mentioned that she'd gone to a world where it was like Halloween every day and there were monsters. I'm like, I want to know more about that, please. Thank you. Yeah, really enjoyed this series overall, and I do feel I liked this one a lot more than the past couple of installments, because the 2 books before this I enjoyed, but I didn't love the way I did like the first couple of books in the series, and so I think I liked this one more. I also read 2 books from a romance trilogy by Katie Rabbit, Sacrifice and Air, which I don't know the name of what this trilogy is called, but it's Katie Rabbit's vampire trilogy. So it is a smutty reverse harem vampire romance. I don't know how much more about that I can actually say other than to express that I really enjoyed these. Although there are some questionable elements, especially in terms of a couple of moments where there's like questionable kind of lack of consent, but then it is also kind of addressed later and all of the characters ultimately seem to be pretty on board, so I'll look past it. But I've always liked vampires, okay, and they're just fun. So I'm talking about these second last in terms of a ranking of enjoyment. Apparently I don't really know what to tell you. Definitely not going to be something that's for everyone, but I've been enjoying that, and I have one book left of the trilogy. Which does mean I have one book left to talk about, and it again was a book that was in my last video. It is my 5-star of the month, which I don't give 5 stars out very often at all, because it has to be, I have to have a certain level of love for something to give it 5 stars. And it's the most disturbing thing I read all month. But it is The Butterfly Garden by Dot Hutchinson, which involves the Butterfly Garden, which is where girls have been kidnapped and tattooed with butterfly wings on their back and then kept here, and there's a man doing awful things to them. So definitely like look up trigger warnings for this if you're someone who can't handle bad things happening to women. Definitely not going to be something everyone can read. And giving that premise alone makes it already sound weird that this is my favourite thing, but the thing that I loved so much about this was it had such a sense of like heart to it, because despite all the awful stuff that was happening, there was also a lot of kind of found family and women sticking together. And I say women, but most of them were girls, not even women yet, which makes it all the worse. But yeah, it was beautiful in a lot of the relationships, and there was a nice balance of those kind of heartwarming moments and the horrible stuff that was happening. So I didn't feel too overwhelmed by the horror of it all, and so I really connected to this in terms of those positive relationships that were kind of carrying the characters through this, and we're following it particularly from the perspective of one girl telling her experience. So there was also that kind of underlying mystery of what's actually happened and how did they get out, because we're following her telling it after she's escaped. So all of it came together so well, and and it's awful and disturbing, but also it's done so well, and there's just something about it that really made me love this. As usual, my light has changed while I'm filming, so that's always nice. Yeah, those are the 12 books that I read in January. I feel like I went through them very quickly, but again, 5 of them I have talked about in detail already, so... And then I just can't talk about smutty romance, because what else can I say about it? Although I have talked about before how, like, as strange as it may be to some people, like, I still read romances, even romances like that, very much for the plot and characters. And obviously they often don't have like a lot of plot to them, but these ones still had enough plot to keep me engaged, because there's this whole thing going on in that vampire series of like kind of vampire politics and dangers in that respect. And while they definitely take a backseat, and the second book particularly is focused on building those relationships, there's enough plot and character development that I'm engaged, and that's actually what I read them for, weirdly enough, as that may seem to people. But yeah, let me know what was your favourite thing that you read in January, and otherwise I will catch you around. Stay safe, stay educated, and starzyrts.